My name's Glenn Cummings. I'm one of the founders of proACT, a local pro-democracy group here in the ACT. We're based very much on the Voices For concept, so we believe in community consultations, kitchen table conversations, mechanisms like that, trying to get engaged community in discussion about issues that are important with them, finding out what's important to them, and then through that process, hopefully surfacing a candidate who can run as a genuine independent who is backed by the community, who will be accountable back to the community and not to a major party or donors or otherwise. It's very much about people power and people discussing the issues. The main difference between proACT and the other Voices For movements is we're intentionally targeting the Senate as a place that we think an independent candidate can make the difference here. There's a couple of reasons. One, the lower house is broadly sewn up by the Labor Party. The Greens have got some strong challenges in a couple of seats and may do well at this election, who knows, but there's not, there doesn't appear to be space for an independent in the lower house. So we took a look at the upper house, crunched some numbers, which I'll run through shortly, and think that there's a chance that an independent could get up. Just so we all start on the same page, I guess it's important to note the differences in voting in the Senate compared to the lower house. In the Senate, well, states in the Senate select 12 senators to 6-year terms. So every 3 years at election time, they have half senates, which 6 senators get elected. That's the norm. In the territories, both here in the Northern Territory, we have we have 2 senators, and they run for 3-year terms. So they're elected very much as a lower house candidates are. To get elected, you have to get a quota. A quota is calculated as the number of formal votes for the Senate divided by the number of positions up for grabs plus 1. So here in the ACT, there's 2 senators. So the calculation is the number of formal votes divided by 3. So you need to get 33 1/3% of the vote plus 1. So you need 1 vote above a quota to get there. 1 vote above 33 1/3% is a quota, I guess is a better way of explaining that. Roughly speaking, last time there's 270,000 votes, so about 90,000 votes is a quota. I'll just share my screen and we'll go through some numbers, some analysis that we put together around the last election results. So there's 2 ways to vote in the Senate. One is above the line and one is below the line. This graph shows you the breakdown of votes just as they were recorded on the paper. If you vote above the line, you put a number in a box for a party. If you vote below the line, you put numbers next to each individual candidate. So you can see the vast majority of people vote above the line. The most popular vote last time out was Labor, 31.2, then Liberal above the line, 28.4, Greens above the line, 12.7. The 4th most common vote was for Katie Gallagher personally, below the line, and then Penny Kybert's the Greens candidate, below the line at 4.2. The next most popular vote was below the line for an independent candidate called Anthony Pesic, who ran on a strong climate change platform last time out. He was grouped with another independent, which meant he wasn't stuck down in the right-hand side of the ballot paper, but it means that he has a box above the line, but there's no party name there, and that's considered a bit of a hindrance, really. It's better than being ungrouped at the end, but it's difficult to win without a party name above the line. The first thing that happens in allocating and counting the Senate votes is if you vote above the line, you're actually voting for the number 1 person on the ticket. So the above the line votes get allocated to people, and Katie Gallagher gets a quota in her own right when the 31% above the line and the 7% below the line are counted. You can see that the Liberal Party's leading number 1 candidate, Zed Selj, is 2% shy of a quota at this point. Katie Gallagher's excess quota of 5.5% then gets allocated based on her preferences, the preferences of people who voted for her. And when that happens, unsurprisingly, the second Labor candidate weights jumps up with 5.7%. So most of Katie Gallagher's excess quota went that way. Some went to the Greens. Some of that 7% that voted below the line would have gone for the Greens second, and some went to Anthony Pesic as well. So that's what happens. Once you get to this point, then it starts to effectively operate like a lower house election, in that the person with the lowest votes, so some of those small boxes in the lower right-hand side, fringe parties, ungrouped independents, they slowly get counted out as the lowest person gets excluded, and their preferences are allocated. And when you start doing that, you run through a process until you get to this point, which is where there's not too many candidates left. You can see Katie Gallagher's still got her quota. The Liberal Party still haven't got a quota at this point. The Greens have jumped up to 19%, and Labor and Anthony have picked up some votes here and there. And the last person out is actually from Clive Palmer United Australia Party, and they had 3.2% of the vote. When they're allocated, that gets the Liberal Parties, excuse me, to a quota. Interestingly, less than half of the preferences from United Australia go to the Liberal Party. They split them between Labor gets about a quarter, and the Greens and Independent make up about 30% between them. So, there's a fair bit of protest vote in there. The interesting thing now is you get to this point, and the Liberal Party have got a quota, but if you look on the right-hand side, there's a block of three, the Greens, the second Labor, and the Independent, who are all probably centre progressive, if you like, or further more progressive than not. And they have 32.5%. They're only just shy of a quota between them. The key thing is, though, is how preferences would flow between them for that to get one of those three people elected. First thing you need to do is reduce the size of the blue box, obviously. So you need the Liberal Party vote to decrease by a minimum 1%, but probably 2, 3, 4% to be comfortable. Recent polling says that the Liberal Party in the Senate is looking at 28%. We're still a little bit out, but 28% is 3% down on where they were at the start of this count at 31. So, that is a possibility of happening. The key question then is what happens to the three boxes on the right-hand side. Anthony Pesick's vote of 5.9% was derived largely of small L Liberals, and we know that from looking at polling booths, so Deakin, Yarralumla, Red Hill, places where the Liberal Party did well. Anthony Pesick also did well, taking some of those small L Liberal voters. And the maths also works out. If you look across the three lower house seats, the two parties split is generally about 38-62, sort of Labor, Liberal. And you can see that the leading Liberal candidate here is 4% off that. So a large chunk of that 4% has gone across to the Independent. What that means is, if this scenario stood, and a small percentage dropped off the Liberal Party, so we had to allocate the next person out, it's likely that the Independents' preferences would flow back to the Liberal Party, because it's one thing to leave, to say, I don't want to vote for the Liberal Party because I don't like this candidate, or I don't like this, I'm going to protest and vote for an independent. It's another thing to say, I'm going to vote for an independent and then preference the Greens or Labor when I'm traditionally a Liberal Party voter. The independent gives you permission to leave home, but generally people will go back home on their next preference. So the key to getting someone of that right-hand block up is that it has to be the independent, and they have to finish in third place behind the Labor Party, and then behind the Liberal Party on first preferences, but they need to be able to be up above the Greens and the second Labor, because preferences from those two will flow back to the centre. It's much more likely that preferences from the Greens and the Labor Party will come to the Independent in the middle than it is that all the Independent vote preferences would flow further left to Labor and to the Greens. So what does all that mean? Well, it means reducing the Liberal Party vote, dropping that blue box, which is potential to happen. But then it means getting an independent who can gain enough of a coalition of smaller Liberal voters, Greens and Labor, to get into third place, and then the preferences remain in that block on the right-hand side. So the magic number is 1 in 6. If you can get 1 in 6 primary votes, which is about 16 or 17% as an independent, it is highly likely you will get the second quota. And the way that works is that you will have to have taken the 2 or 3% out of the Liberal Party, attracted more small L Liberal voters across to your platform, which is probably going to be strong climate change. It's probably going to be, economic recovery, a bunch of issues that appeal there. And you also need to have taken enough out of the Greens to reduce them down and for you to get above them. And if you can get to 16%, you've probably done that. And of course, there's also disgruntled Labor voters that you can pick up as well. I'll stop sharing there. That's the maths. The platform you can debate about and what it should look like, but that's the maths. I'm convinced that it is possible if the right independent with sufficient profile that can bring that coalition together exists. Then I think you could have an independent in the Senate from the ACT, and I think that would be a good thing. Thanks very much.